Greetings. This is Weekend Story Time with Skyler Saunders. What's current? I like to pump the brakes this weekend. It's, the holiday weekend right before the 4th of July. And I wanted to just slow it down. I was usually going to do my producers' um, stories. I was going to do those clips. But I decided to go live and share with you my stories that I've written over the past. I have over 1,300 stories on vocal.media, VOCAL.media. You can look for my name, SKYLER space SAUNDRS. Okay, so let's get it right into it. First story that we're going to have is called Ayn Rand, the Unknown Ideal Woman. Ayn Rand has a solid base, but still too few know who she was. Two morally perfect men came out of the mind of Ayn Rand. From her two most popular novels, The Fountainhead, published in 1943, and Atlas Shrugged, published in 1957, Howard Rourke and John Galt, respectively, exemplify the grandeur of what it means to be an absolutely ethical person. Their genius may surpass the common man, but anyone can relate to their ironclad virtues, all of which Miss Rand made possible. While she can be looked at as an ultimate feminist, such a moniker would do no real justice. Miss Rand was a woman in body but a man in spirit. It is not to say that she possessed a psychological split in her gender identity. It simply means that she was an American hero who championed man and men in her quest for displaying to the world that happiness and wonderment are possible in life on this earth as individuals. How did this woman affect my life? She commanded my scattered ideas and arranged them into a harmonious collection of thought. Before I delved into her beautiful world, I stood as a committed mystic and tribalist. I thought that my mortal soul had to be saved and that people of the darker nation possessed greater weight over all other races. Once I immersed myself in the literature, saw documentaries like Ayn Rand, A Sense of Life, 1997, was when it was released, and allowed myself to become a young warrior, both in matter and in spirit. I knew that Ayn Rand would forever be a fixture in my existence. Where all of Ayn Rand's ideas originated for me. I started off with nonfiction first. I perused the library shelves and came upon a book with a striking, even sexy title, The Virtue of Selfishness, published in 1964. I devoured its pages like a lion fresh from the hunt and ready to chow down on an antelope. Ideas flew at me like at a fast clip. Words like collectivism, egoism, altruism, and self-interest all shaded new sketches on the tablet of my mind. I was hooked. I sought out various works of fiction written by Ayn Rand, but chose her shortest book of this sort, Anthem, which was published in 1938. This novella further solidified my taste for being a complete individual. But the sad thing is that I stood in the proverbial closet, not admitting to my atheism, selfishness, or individualism to anyone in my family or close elsewhere. Like a splintered piece of wood, I had broken into two factions. My mind held on to Rand's thoughts, while my body went through the motions of going to church and remaining involved in school programs that called for multiculturalism and diversity for its own sake. In my head, I knew that Ayn Rand was right and that her ideas blasted away all the nonsense that had been propagated in my mind for 17 years. Like the son that she never had, I considered myself a covert crusader for my philosophical mother. Miss Rand brought out the truth and painted a portrait of the entirety of human activity that has led to suffering, anxiety, and pain. She meant that the evils of mysticism, collectivism, and altruism spelled the disease infecting the minds of the people of the earth. She would provide the cure for those maladies in reason, individualism, and capitalism. As I became a United States Marine, I saw firsthand the explicit nature of those aforementioned vicious ideals. In boot camp, the banishment of singular pronouns made me feel like I was living in a chapter of Anthem. When I got to military occupational specialty MOS school, I noticed that many faces existed in green and desert-colored camouflage, and the complete selfishness and sacrifice that so many had held as the moral standard became clear in the fleet Marine force. So, what did I do? I shrugged. The breaking point which changed my entire course. When a superior non-commissioned officer had grown too oppressive, I pushed back using whatever I could without physically harming him. I ripped up magazines. I shouted at him. All of this took place on the grounds of the United States Naval Clinic in Yuma, Arizona. Before I knew it, I would be administered an injection that would sedate me. I ended up in another state 176 miles away. At the hospital in San Diego, California, I would get to know the patients while taking prescribed drugs for a diagnosis of bipolar disorder 1. In between being incapacitated and trying to maintain composure during waking hours, I encountered a sailor. We talked for a while and Miss Rand's name came up in the conversation. He scampered back to his room. Now he happened to possess a red and white book. It's the fountain pen. You mean the fountainhead? I said. Oh, yes. Well, it's yours now. I clutched the 700 plus page book like a precious metal, or like it was a piece of steel ready to be fitted into a skyscraper. In the 3 months that I had stayed in that facility, I completed the book. Work is larger than life, and I could never match his architectural brilliance, but I relate to him on a level that I think Miss Rand intended. He is stone cold honest, not to be confused with brutality. Only dishonesty can be brutal. His integrity, his backbone speak wonderfully because of Miss Rand's extraordinary diction. She places him in situation after situation where he is tested by those who worship mediocrity in classic architecture. Rourke's buildings are not classical or modern. They're just his buildings. I admired Ayn Rand for that. She could have just written him as a nonconformist misfit who just wanted to challenge the status quo. While he does not confirm in his work definitely goes against conviction, he is not fashionable or showy but determined and ego-driven. For Miss Rand to include this in her writings, it drove my mind to succeed at whatever endeavor I pursued. At this time, I was 20 years old. At 20 years of age, Miss Rand embarked on her voyage to America and reached New York City a few weeks later and turned 21 in the process. But what she held in her mind was an inferno of creative energy that would sustain her throughout her life in the United States. While I may have been on lockdown in a psychiatric ward, I burned through the pages of the Fountainhead. Each passage provided me the fuel to one day be released from these walls and carve out a life for which Rourke would tip his hat to me. A new outlook on life. So, I was discharged from the Marine Corps in the spring of 2009. With my battered novel in tow, I made my way back home to Newark, Delaware. There I went on a tear, using my funds from my work at a Starbucks and my disability pay from the military to buy as many Ayn Rand books as I could. I slashed through both of the remaining fiction, We the Living and, of course, Atlas. The former is depressing, and to someone with bipolar disorder, it's a task to get through it. If Miss Rand had not imbued the book with such intrigue, passion, and control, I would never finish it, but I did. Miss Rand conveys the wrenching, harsh reality of an oppressive state in startling, sparkling language. After reading her first effort, I then reached for her magnum opus, Atlas Shrugged. I rented CDs from the library and used the book that I had bought in California to aid me on Miss Rand's wondrous journey. The greatest takeaway that I got from reading the novel was that I relate most with Hank Reardon. Again, he is out of my league as far as business geniuses go, but his family life mirrored mine, if not completely. His mother, wife, and brother are monsters. My family are real-life, flesh and blood human beings, not projections that signify the flaws and contrast the virtues of Reardon. The tenor of their disdain for Reardon and his work was like a faint echo of the people in my own life who decried Miss Rand. While I love my real-life family, there will forever be a rift between them and me because of Miss Rand shining over. I took to the internet and watched every interview available on YouTube that featured Miss Rand. Her quiet grace and searing intellect motivated me to be as exact and precise in my words as her. I'm still not quite there, but I'm working on it. This woman was a once-in-a-millennium genius who revolutionized two fields, literature and philosophy. I continue to study this mastermind's work, reading most of her nonfiction and seeking out ways to improve myself. I credit Ayn Rand for not opening my eyes, but averting my attention to focus on my own selfish adventures. She aided me in hours of supreme discomfort and mania. In times of depression, her words lifted me up by impelling me to not let my fire go out, sparked by a replaceable spark. What I got from Ayn Rand in the culture. The Though never given her absolute due in the academic circles and maligned by critics on the left and the right, Miss Rand's influence on me never wavered. When I was confused about a chapter, couldn't grasp a radical idea, or failed to comprehend the essence of a sentence, I never blamed Miss Rand. I would dig deep and enlist dictionaries and encyclopedias to aid me in my hour of misunderstanding. But those times rarely occurred. I delved into what Miss Rand had to say and savored the delicious language that she offered. After more visits in several psychiatric centers, I used Mr. Rand's words to keep me based in reality. Whenever I felt that I was the only one in the world that felt like heroes had to be killed or commit suicide before they would be devoured by their lesser enemies, I thought of Dominique Franklin from The Fountain. If I consider the idea of being the only one who knew that there remained a radical alternative to conventional ideals, I wonder about Dagny Taggart and Atlas Shrugged. These women that Miss Rand invented exhibit traits that I could love to see in a wife. Not only are they strong, but they're visible in a way that is extraordinary and extremely rare in the entire canon of world literature. Miss Rand wanted to craft female characters who showed their brashness, brains, beauty, and shunned writing about women who became doormats for the male characters to trample. Rather, Miss Rand constructed her women to man up while still keeping and conveying their feminine mystique. After my final stay at a mental institution, I continued my quest for meaning. I read Fountainhead and Atlas 3 times apiece and read Anthem at least 20 times with the aid of an audiobook app. I have traveled to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Newport Beach, California, and Cleveland, Ohio to attend OCONs or Objectives conferences so far. What I have taken from these excursions is the continuous search for meaning and richness to be found among other objectives who share my values. Miss Rand's philosophy of objectivism keeps me sane. Truly. Sure, I have a pharmacy's worth of antipsychotic prescription drugs that regulate the chemicals in my brain, but it's the philosophy that keeps my mind focused on making myself into a better person. At times when I see things or hear things that other people don't detect, I recall Miss Rand's objectivism. Ayn Rand, rationality, and me. The philosophy affords me the opportunity to see reality and only reality. As I prepare to go to other OCONs, I remind myself what got me to those locales. It was the reason, purpose, and self-esteem that necessitated my will to discover, to seek out, to learn. As a current community college dropout, a Marine, and a bipolar outpatient, I needed all the help I could get. Miss Rand sculpted heroes that felt tangible and real once they popped out off of the page. It seemed like they lifted right out from the text and shook my hand. I refuse to regard these as bipolar episodes. I recognize that Miss Rand's writing is so profound and engrossing that it would mean that I will be able to face the real world, ironically, because of fictitious characters. All of Miss Rand's work deal with the efficacy of reason. She holds up a banner for rationality on each page of a collection of stories and essays. It is this fervor for the mind that the human capacity to think that Ayn Rand had included in everything that she said or wrote. The radiant glow that I felt after accomplishing my goal of imparting to girlfriends, fellow Marines, and anyone who would listen to the deep lessons espoused by Miss Rand remains a wonderful feeling. And that's what great women like Ayn Rand have done for centuries. Some were burned at the stake, crushed with rocks, or faced acid attacks or worse. These ogreish displays only heightened the power of Miss Rand's art. A student of history, she knew that these women had gone through. She knew just how evil humanity can be. This is why she injected in her work the idea that women can achieve just as much and even more than men. Miss Rand was a shining example of a lone individualist who sparked the motor of the world in the minds of other individuals. She was alone but not lonely in the long line of women who employed their brains to enhance their lives. My life became all the better with Miss Rand. I shudder to think about what my life would have been like had I not encountered Miss Rand's work. I would probably be wasting away in a psych ward, zonked out of my mind on pills and pushing the complete puzzles to pass the time. I could have. Okay, where am I going because of Miss Rand? Or where am I going because of Miss Rand? I could have been sent to a state facility where I may have been strapped to a table for 23 hours out of the day. All that conjecture is just that. Because of Ayn Rand, I have a laser focus on achieving my accomplishments. Whether they be small or great, it will be because of Miss Rand that I would have known the wonders of that this world has in store for me. I intend to soak up the marrow out of life. If I intend to let my voice be heard, on internet platforms and forever be an ambassador for Miss Rand's extremist, gorgeous body of work. Ayn Rand just happened to be born and lived the rest of her days as a woman. For her to rise up against the male-dominated realms of thought and letters and a testament to her soul, which could not be tamed or ruled. Like an oil fire that shoots up into the night sky from a torch, spouting precious inky black stuff amongst the flames, her spirit exploded with creativity, wit, wisdom, grace, and verve. She knew that virtually all of her work would contend with the prevailing thought of the past 2,000 years. By standing firm on her word, which she said, and I meant it, and I mean it, Ayn Rand knew that she was what she was doing. She damned her critics and excommunicated former adherents of her work for going against her personally and professionally. Though some would say that she was cold and calculating, the opposite is true. She loved writing. She loved cats. She loved skyscrapers. She loved her husband. She loved life. With a woman so committed to reason and truth, it would appear as though she had no time for emotion. Actually, she regarded emotion as an extremely important part of human life. She just viewed it as the effect, not the cause. Reason ought to be the absolute in every human life. It is what distinguishes us from the animals. But Miss Rand also taught me that it is a matter of choice for one to employ reason. In any moment of a man or woman's life, he or she can be rational or jettison such a task. Throughout all future generations, for someone with a mental disorder like myself, I am impelled to always be rational, lest I crawl into a fetal position on the floor out of depression or lash out on anyone around me in a manic fit. Miss Rand has shown me that even with a psychological condition, I can still attain and keep our values. All the fears of being locked away in a musty room, hosed down with a disinfectant, while vermin scurry about have vanished. I look forward to telling even more people about the earth-shattering ideas that Ayn Rand instilled in me. A woman who will be like capitalism, the known ideal, published in 1966, an obvious ally to some and still ignored by others, will still hold sway throughout all future generations. Thank you very much for listening to that. Thank you, Christopher Perkins. I have a goal for today. You are first. If you could just chip in, as much money as you like. If you appreciated what I just, laid down, that's one of my, top stories I published on vocal.media. I appreciate you. I do appreciate everything you do. So hit that donate button. I do appreciate it. And that was my story, Ayn Rand, the Unknown Ideal Woman. And it just if you delve into it, if you read it, beyond what I just said, if you read it for yourself, you might even get a different experience than what I just provided. It's all based on my experiences. It's all factual. It's all telling the truth. It it took me on this wild ride, this great ride, through the history of what Ayn Rand has laid out for me. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'm gonna be signing off. I'm gonna just experiment with these, just doing my stories. Uh, Once again, thank you for Christopher Perkins. I didn't reach my goal. I'm getting out of here though, irregardless. I know that's not a word, but it's fun to say. You gotta say irregardless. It's like ain't. Ain't's another word. Ain't a word, But irregardless ain't a word either. So, but it's fun to say. But I thank you for your time. Anyone out there who checked in, checked out. I'm going on 20 minutes. It took about 15 minutes or so to read. That's one of my highest, read stories. It's in the four figures. And I'm most proud of it. I think it's probably my greatest work, even though it didn't win the prize, for that particular challenge on vocal.media. Not mad because I have 3 places. I've placed bronze and silver twice. So I'm proud of my work, and I'm continuing to do even more in the future. Thank you very much. Take care.